So, hello everyone, welcome to Feedback Friday. We're going to check out some viewer submitted models, starting with Brush Mamba. And we've got this kind of sort of cyberpunky, but also fantasy-esque. It's interesting, I guess. Yeah, okay. So, to start off, I would say I like sort of the colors that you've got going on. Hi, Jam Jam. Hi, Pete. Well, Star Wars, sort of. Yeah, I like sort of some of the colors you got going on. Let's jump into it though. So one thing I'll say is that, like, I've noticed quite a bit this tendency with faces in particular to like really try and make everything super smooth. Okay. And I get it from like a blending perspective of trying to like make everything really soft. But also, it can be really easy sometimes to like lose sort of the shapes of the face. So what I want to show here is kind of like trying to think about the shapes of the face a little more, and like how you have sort of this breakdown of like there are some like forms to the face, right? So we can start to try and think about like some of these shapes a little bit more, how you can break down. Now she has her hair, but normally there would be a shape like this. There's kind of this shape here that goes in. The nose sort of comes out like this. You have this kind of triangle on the sides of the nose, right? Then there's like the shape underneath. There's typically like a little shadow here, and you have something like this, right? So I think what happens a lot is that people get kind of lost, or they lose these shapes, right? And by losing these shapes, you're kind of, everything just becomes like super smooth, right? So what I would recommend is trying to like restore some of that shape. Okay, like let's think here. Right, so separating it a bit more, go to this layer, right? Like creating a little bit more form to the face. Right. If you can create a little more form here, it tends to make a more interesting look overall, right? Which, how you do this is by using some value, right? We need to think about like a bit more of like shape in terms of using the values to define kind of the form. Okay. So here on the forehead, right? It's like the forehead is it's slightly rounded, but you don't need as much shadow on that far side if you think about the forehead as kind of flat. And then once you start to like get some of these shapes in, then you can like smooth these out. But like even this upper lip here, right? Something maybe more like this. Maybe the chin comes over a little bit more, right? Starting to define just the light and shadow planes of the face, okay? Then you add highlights on top, and highlights can give you like more of a sense of lighting direction and a bit more help you define the materials. But even something like this, just these two sort of changes here, like underneath the jaw tends to be a little more shadowed. She has a very small very small chin. But something like this, right? And then you can play around with like other lights and shadows and get some more detail and stuff in. But and yeah, then you can start to like smooth this over, okay? So like now we can now soften some of these transitions, okay? But the difference here being like that this is like just super rounded and she doesn't really have any shape to her face, right? Where this feels like it has some like form, okay? I hope that makes sense. Clark, thanks for the prime. Okay. So the next, then you can come back, right? And now we're going to make another layer on top where we really start to push in some like highlights. We'll make these more yellowish, okay, based on your lights here. And now you can like really start to push some of these highlights into the face. Like there's a highlight here, maybe there's a highlight here, and you start defining some of these like smaller, more what I would call like micro volumes of the face, right? Things like the highlight on the cheekbone. And depending on how like glossy the texture is, can change some of these highlights, right? Like maybe the highlight's actually here, depending if this is your main viewing angle. There would be like a highlight here. Maybe there's a small highlight in the transition at the bridge of the nose. Okay, maybe there's a little highlight here on that part of the arm, and then yeah, we get some like highlight here on like the upper lip. Maybe a little highlight here at the corner of the mouth, on the chin a little. And then, yeah, we might have to smooth this out. Okay, so the big difference being like, we're trying to think about like the shapes more and then just like creating something perfectly smooth, right? It's best to just get these like shapes defined early, right? These like overall forms and volumes defined early on in the process, and then you can begin to like blend in between, right? Let's see. Some like now that the forehead, right? Now I can like smooth this out a little bit, create a bit more rounded shape to it, right? I hope that's helpful. Okay, so you can see like without highlights, right? So get the shape, right? You can see that her shape is more, right? A little more flat on front, okay? And then putting in highlights on top. In terms of the hair, I think the hair's pretty nice. The fur, you could do a little bit better job of like trying to make these like more tufts, right? Try and avoid like putting too much highlight towards the bottom of these. Really, you should think of these as like the highlights are where the light would reflect off. They're just like hair, right? So if you look at my hair, we'll go to the camera of me specifically. Make sure this camera's out of the way. Right, the hair, the highlights are, right, if I scrunch it up, right, this is like an interior fold, but I get a highlight here where it's like curved in and then it curves out here, and where these two curves, right, like one goes like this and the other goes like out like that, right? You can see that those curves both get the highlight, and you've done that on the hair here, but then on the fur you're just like putting the highlights at the tips, right, as opposed to like where you would think like where the highlight would be based on the direction of the light and like the flow of the hair. So try and be conscious of that and don't just like put them at the bottom, right? If you think about this as an overall shape, okay, there's going to be more light towards the top. That means we have to take something like this and like this should all get like the overall form of this pelt, like a little bit darker towards the bottom, a little bit brighter at the top, and then you can like add the highlights where they need to go. Okay, so you can see it on this one, right? There's clearly like light here, right? There's like light at the top, and then there's more shadow at the bottom. But once you start to go painting the like individual tufts, you get lost in the detail too soon, and you lose the overall shape of everything. Okay, so try and remember like the actual shape first. It's important. All right. Also, this shadow is maybe a little dark here. Like, I like this sort of bounce light you have, but realize there's some purple here, so maybe you could play with that a little bit. Some sort of like grayish purple if the light's like bouncing off her skin, off her hair. But then is her hair purple or is it blue? So if it's blue, then it's going to be more grayish, something like this, right? And that light is going to bounce off of her blue hair and start to create like a bounce light on her jaw. Okay. All right. Next. This one is Ruben. Oh god, you guys are posting new ones. You make me lose my place. All right, it's fine. Ruben, I plan on taking this piece to Nova. Oh, we got judges in the chat and me, so that's fine. The sculpt leans towards two color schemes, but hold up, what? The sculpt leans towards two color schemes, but I instead focus on the demonic aspect and set the fallen angel in a hellish environment, hence the red OSL from below. Thanks. Okay. Sure. Those feathers are very shiny. All right. All right, I see what you kind of mean. So here's the thing, okay? Hi, Lucas. So you're saying that you have this red from below, right? So there's this like red light coming in from below. Clearly it's affecting the sword. It's kind of like reflecting off the armor. But where does it stop? It just like stops, right? So when you're doing this sort of like overall glow from below, it's large enough that it's not like she's standing directly over top of a flame, right? Or some red glowing thing. Okay? There's clearly like light, this overall sort of light that's going to affect majority of the shadows. Okay? So if you're going to do this, like, well, her wing curves up over her, right? It's like this, where it goes up above her, right? You can see, like, if I do this with my arm, like, my arm is in shadow, right? Well, that means that red is going to affect her wings also, right? So let me turn that off. Okay. So where's the, like, even if it's more subtle, right? Like it's not as strong as a light up here. Like, where's the red in the shadows of the wing? Let's assume that this is red, right? There's quite a lot of red on the sword, but then I don't really get any on her hands, right? So yeah, you can't just like have it stop, right? It just, you need to be thinking of it like everywhere. Like, where does that red, if there's red here, right? Well, there'd probably be like red under her, a little bit of red under her jaw. right? There'd be some red like under here, under her nose, which she doesn't really have like very strong shadows on her face. But even like underneath the horns and stuff, like there would be like red in these areas. If that light is like a general, it's not it's like omnidirectional, it's like a floor of red. How do you decide how far to take your shadows and light points? Everything I work on always winds up looking like they're standing in midday sun. Well, that you've kind of answered your question by like just trying to place them somewhere in an environment is typically like one way to think about it. And then you have to expose for the subject, right? Just like you with photography, you expose for whatever the subject you're shooting, so you have a value range, right? You have to do the same thing with your paintings where you're thinking about the subject and then how that subject is affected by the light and how strong you want the shadows and stuff to be. There isn't like a correct answer here, but you need to be thinking about like how that light affects everything. Okay. Then anything, right? So what happens with metals is metals tend to reflect more, okay? Not more, but they reflect stronger, all right? So things like you get sharper, more intense reflections on metal. So if you're going to have like a red glow, like things that are facing downward towards that glow should be like sharper and more intense. Okay. So try and get those like those really sharp red glowing objects, right? Like on any of those lower facing planes, including edges, right? So lower facing edges are going to reflect more. Right? All this metal here should be like quite reflecting quite strong, assuming that there's, I imagine some kind of, I don't know, we're talking about like hellfire or whatever. You might need to shift it more orange, but on the metallics it's going to be stronger and sharper, and then on other parts it's going to be a more soft effect, right? So all of this metal, right, needs to have a much more intense glow on it. Now, as far as the skin is concerned, I feel like there's just this really strong kind of plain white light source from above that's not particularly like giving me the feeling of a setting, right? What you might want to do, let's do this. Go to her. I'm going to duplicate this layer real quick. How do I duplicate it? Do I just do this? Duplicate. All right. And then we're going to take it and we're going to play with the color balance a little. So the way you can make this feel even more intense is like in the lights. All right, we could shift everything a bit more bluish. And then the shadows, we want to shift more red. I don't want to change the black background, but yeah, so like here we can shift everything slightly more red. And you quickly can see like the difference between this, and this, right? It's like we're playing with the cooling off the lights more to make those like red shadows even more intensely red, and we can split the difference or something, right? Something like this. But you can feel like that this already makes the like red fire more intense by cooling off the shadows. Now look what color her skin is, right? It's like this tealish white instead, right? And the like purple starts to shift to like these cold blues. the lights of the metal start to shift. An anonymous gifter gifted a tier 1. To thank you. Thank you, anonymous user. All right, I hope that helps. It makes more sense, but like if you're gonna do this atmospheric thing, like you have to lean into it, right? You can't just be like, you can't just make everything neutral and then like, okay, now I'm just gonna throw a red OSL from below, right? You're gonna lean into that glow from below and use the color of the lights in order to make the shadows, like the atmosphere, feel even more intense by contrast. Okay. All right. Next one. Who's the next? Who's next? Oh God. Sukadong. Hello, Eric. I would like to know. If I want to my work to have dappled light coming down to the focal point of the work. How should I start? Should I press the shadows down, and how should I draw the position of the light? And I would like to ask you to take a look at the composition of colors and tell me how to make it more suitable. Thanks so much. Okay, so you haven't done any dappled light yet, right? So right now it's just kind of normal. All right, dappled light. Let me switch to this camera so I can Google image search. Oh, thanks, Lucas, for the sub. If it was actually you, or is that comment just stolen valor? So, yeah, this is kind of what he means with dappled light, all right? I hate Google image search so much. But basically, it's like light coming through trees, okay? So some sort of effect like this, right? Well, what you want to know about dappled light is that the light, the further an object is from the... it's not exactly bokeh. Bokeh is like a artifacting in cameras based off of the shape of the iris. Okay. Dappled lighting is like, I'm gonna just draw a diagram. Okay. So let's think about the sun. All right. I probably won't even draw on your miniature. I'm sorry. I'm just going to explain this concept. So let's think about the sun. So we have the sun, and it's very large. In fact, it's huge. Okay? So really it's like this gigantic wall of light. And that wall of light creates parallel rays coming towards the earth, right? Well, what happens with any light source, right, is that light, and there's an object, let's say there's a ball here, and then you have some sort of plane that it's casting a shadow on, right? So if I create light like this, and they're traveling in parallel lines, well, those lines cast a shadow on the ground. Let's draw a ground. But they cast a shadow, and that shadow is like this. Well, that would be if light was perfectly parallel, right? But it is not. The sun really is casting light like this, right? And it's like, but it's way in the distance. So what happens is that light comes in like this, and there's a little bit of light that gets here, and a little bit of light that gets there, and you end up getting this blurred object, right? This blurred shadow with like a soft edge. Okay, something like this. Okay, because part of the light, like goes around it from an angle, right? So it like comes in from an angle and it hits somewhere on the shadow. Okay? But the closer you move this object to the shadow, right? If it was here, that light, those lines can't like they don't have as much of an angle to get around the object. So the closer an object is to the object that it's like casting a shadow on, the sharper the sharper the shadow is going to be. So what you can see in this photo, right, is you have trees and leaves, and those leaves are quite blurry, but the shadow of the chair that's in the room is a lot sharper, right? Because those leaves might be 100, well, maybe not 100, but like 30 feet further away from the wall than the chair is. The chair might be like a third of the distance from the wall that the actual leaves are. And then maybe the window is like twice the distance from the chair, right? So you have a sharper shadow. Damn it, I hate Google image search. So you have a sharper shadow with the chair. You have a blurry shadow with the window, and then you have an even blurrier shadow with like leaves, right? I mean, you can see with like these sorts of effects that, yeah, the closer you get between the surface and the object actually casting the shadow, the sharper it is. Okay? So you need to think about what's casting the shadow and how much that shadow, how blurry those edges are going to be, right? The thing I would recommend practicing before you even try and do a dappled light effect is you should consider like just practicing regular cast shadows first, so you can get a really good understanding on how like to just paint a regular cast shadow effect. Then you can start playing with like dappled lighting and stuff like that. As far as like color scheme wise, I think you're playing with too many saturated colors here. Like it's just sort of everything's drawing attention at the moment. And yeah, same sort of deal here with like the volumes, like you're losing shape. So these like muscles are so sharp that like the highlights are defining more of the shape than the actual stomach muscle is, right? So like this should actually be quite a bit like softer than what you've done. Like her abdominals are not that sunken that they would create that much of a shadow, right? It's also like really yellow. It's like Simpsons almost yellow skin, so I would think about like trying to mix in a little more pink or orange into this, see how yellow it is. Something more like here might make some sense. Okay, and it's like, why is her yeah, you're not quite nailing the volumes. This is what I'm talking about with shadow shapes. Like you're making the highlights define the volume, and instead of the actual form define the volume, and then using highlights as like a way to emphasize like material and then define like micro volumes and stuff. All right, so chill on the extreme contrast, right? Like, well, oops, sorry, I drew on the same layer, but okay. Okay, and here's the thing. This is an interesting one, Doms. So my brain is this is a comment from Dom's Minis. my brain is starting to think about technique to recreate that. Stippling, glaze dot, more painted, blah, 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 airbrush, all these things. It's like, this is the thing. And this is the thing that kind of drives me crazy with miniature painting in general, is like everybody is, the word you use here that I find interesting is techniques, okay? Stop thinking about techniques. It's just painting the light, okay? You just place the light where it should go, right? And I know that's an oversimplification of just saying like, just put it where it should be, right? But like, it's not about technique always. It's if you can get the values right, which was the whole point of this last video I did, right? Where I painted the cyberpunk guy. It's just about putting the values in the right spot. How you want to blend and do all these other effects is like, that's up to you. But if you can put the light, if you can get the right values in the right spots, you can achieve any look you really want. Okay? It's just knowing that contrast and how to define form and light and shape. Okay? All right. I hope that was helpful. Because right now, nothing about this is really telling me like the direction of the light, which is one of the most important, most important things. Ethan, thanks for the tier 1, man. Appreciate it. Okay. Next. Superman is back. Supranamen. All right. He's fixed some of the stuff. All right. Yeah, the colors are like way better on this color balance. We're going to look at this real quick, and I have like 1 point of feedback to give you about rim lights. So on rim lights work just like regular lights, okay? They are just another kind of light, right? What you need to do is you need to think about what the value of the thing is that you're painting, right? So this is white, this is red. His hair is black. His skin is a lighter shade of pinkish, right? Well, what does that mean? It means that the value of your rim lights also need to change depending on what material you're painting on, right? If we do the thing, right, where we take and make this a color layer, we make it black and white. Does that rim light really read as a light on that white? Does the rim light really, which looks lighter to you, his hair or his skin at the rim light? Ice engine. Right? Which one, guys? Which looks brighter, the hair or the skin? In the rim, like which one looks like it has a higher local value? Yeah, the hair looks brighter, yeah? So what do we need to do? Really, these should be like switched. This should be like this. And then this should be like this or something. Right? Because it's a darker tone. Okay? And that means over here, right? Now you're switching to kind of a magenta, but this should be like pretty light. Yeah? On a white. Should represent really like the color of that light more. Same with like anywhere on his skin, you know? Again, it's about the value. It's not about, and then like on the red parts, right? We can go lower in the value. Yeah, so now, right, the value on the light of his face is brighter than it is on his hair. Right, the light on the cuff is lighter than it is on the red parts. Okay. I told him to tone down the rim light because it's nonsense, but if he's gonna do it, then do it right. Okay, so that's what I mean by yeah, you still have to be aware when painting a rim light, like that certain things have higher values than others, and you need to make sure that those materials reflect that light properly. Okay. As far as like the other stuff goes, yeah, man, way better on the way better on like the other parts, like the color composition and stuff is a lot nicer now without all the other crazy colors going on. So cool. All right. Why does it do that every time? It's so annoying. Don't want it to go all the way to the bottom. All right. I'm not even gonna try that name. Sorry. Hi Eric, love your work and learning a lot from your feedback Fridays. Thank you to help us improve. Okay. I would like your feedback. Something push more the quality of this figure. I made some cast shadows and OSL from the ground. Here we go again. But I'm more interested about the skin and clothing or anything you think is important. I wish one day to have a display quality painting. If you have any tips. All right. Here's my tip. Okay. Here's my big tip. Stop overcomplicating things. Everybody wants to run before they can walk. All right. This is a thing I see with a lot of painters. Clearly you have some understanding of like light just based on the dog. Some of the light on the skin is pretty good, right? The positioning of the volumes. But everybody wants to get fancy, okay? And then do all these effects everywhere, right? Like, we don't need gimmicks all the time, okay? Sometimes just painting a good looking kind of plain figure is enough. You know, I think of some of like the best figures, obviously, like I think of some of the like really impressive figures from Mark, and they're not like full of gimmicks. Now, sometimes he's known for doing his like textures and material rendering and stuff like that. But some of like my favorite paint jobs of Mark is just a really well rendered volumes, right? So yeah, like don't get lost in these like ideas of trying to be fancy constantly, and just focus on like properly rendering some materials and volumes and stuff. Like let's take this sleeve, okay? You have a pretty good look going on right now. But what I would say about these highlights, right? Well, these highlights, they fall in the valleys too, right? So they're not always just on these edges, right? You've got it a little here in the valley, but connecting some of these shapes sometimes, right? Like there should be light inside the folds also. Which you've done a bit, but most of your highlights are focused on just the raised areas, right? So this is what I mean with like nailing the shape, but now I also don't really have a shape of the sleeve. I've got this really dark green here, or this like greenish tone, but like where's that greenish tone like under the arm, right? Like where's the direction of the light? Shouldn't the bottom of the sleeve be like much darker, right? The light's coming in from above, the like lower part of her arm should be in shadow. And the upper part of her arm should not, which means like some of these are like way too dark, right? These are facing upwards. They would be in the light. Okay, and then we use highlights to like define them. Okay. So just like getting the shape of the sleeve right, getting these forms correct can make way more of a difference in towards painting like a good looking figure than any fancy OSL or any of that stuff, right? Just focus on rendering good volumes and painting a good like nice and defined shapes will go a whole lot further than any sort of, you know, gimmicks, right? Now, that said, once you like understand this, right? So now I've defined this sort of shape here. Once you've like understood how this sort of volume is rendered, right? And then you can come back and then you can start playing with like, okay, well now I want to introduce a second light source from below, and what does that light source do on this, right? I end up with something like this, and maybe there's this like orangish light coming from below, and light can only add, right? So what do we have to do? We have to have a lighter value than what we've got, and we start to add this like firelight to this volume underneath. Okay, and that light is now separating the two. That core shadow is now separating the two planes of light, right? Okay. Would you go more with a desaturated tone on a lower and more saturated? It depends on light. Most of the time, your most saturated tones are actually in the halftones, like the transitional halftones. So normally your most saturated tones tend to be like somewhere in here. Obviously, if you had like a firelight from below, then like that firelight is going to be more saturated likely than, depending on the color of the material, right? Than your white light source. But yeah, it depends. Hola. Greetings from Colombia. All right, makes sense. Yeah. So just focus on good shapes and stuff first, because you've got some good shapes here, right? Like this stuff makes good sense. Like the dog looks quite nice, but then yeah, where you start to try and get fancy with like these reds and stuff is where it starts to fall apart. So just focus on good shapes. All right, that's the most important thing. This is probably too dark. And that's like way off color, but anyways, you get what I'm talking about. It's because I'm on an add mode. I'm going to be more subtle than that, but yeah. Okay. All right. Doms. Looking good. You're welcome. Sitting here refreshing Nova. Wait, sitting here refreshing Nova, so figured I'd put this guy in here. Oh, refreshing Nova is in like hitting F5 to try and register for classes. How do you figure out color action interactions for OSL? For instance, a blue lightsaber light interacting with skin and hair. Good question. Don't have time to answer it. I wish I did, but that is a very complicated subject, and you really need to understand how different lights interact, and that light is additive and color is subtractive, and there's a lot more complicated topics to talk about that. Eric, are you doing any classes at LVO this year? No, I will not be at LVO. I did classes at LVO this year. I will not be going in October. Voxel Forge, thanks for following. Any resources to learn about that you would recommend? Kirill's book has a bit on that. In the reference channel in the Discord, I have a chart that I made of like how different colors interact with different color lights interact with different color materials. But it's much more complicated than just that chart makes it out to be. Okay. All right. Sitting here refreshing. Yeah. Finished this late last year. I know there's a bunch of things that could be improved. I'd love your take. What should be changed? Okay. Not bad. Swords, not bad. The gold's not bad. Whatever. A couple things. First face is pretty good, but it's missing some nice shadows to really like give a little bit further definition where I would like. Right? You've got these like dark shadows here. You should also have a little more like intense shadow here. Like the mouth could be more defined, right? Something like the shadow above his eye could be a little sharper or a little heavier, just to define the features a little bit more. The biggest thing I'm seeing is this cape, right? Where you're doing all these specklings. Again, this is like you're not really rendering the form, you're rendering like just highlights. So like you need to think that like these are folds like a staircase, right? And how the light would hit on these folds. They wouldn't hit on the front of the fold. The light hits on the top of the fold, and then you get highlights. Like, do you see how subtle this form is? Right? But your highlights are like like super sharp. Okay, that just means that this needs to be way more subtle, right? So like this should all be like a lot smoother and flatter than what you've got. Okay, there shouldn't be this much contrast here. Doesn't really make sense for this, the way this shape is. Okay, and then highlights tend to go on the more towards the front, all right, not on top. So you would have more something like this, right, with the light being focused, the highlights being focused more towards the main view. Okay. And fabric, unless it's like silk or something, the highlights tend to be pretty diffused. Okay. Hello, I saw some of your stuff back at Privateer Press headquarters before it closed down. Cool. That's some of my early professional box art work. So that's cool. Was that your LVO class? Vegas is so much easier for me to get to, but I think the change in date is going to crush the paint. Oh, I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably end up teaching another workshop like at Verco's Vault, so we'll keep an eye on that. As far as other stuff goes, some of these, right, you could definitely like sharpen some of these a little more with a bit more edge highlights. Think about that, like why this is so dark, right? And all of them are kind of rendered the same, where it's like you did the same reflection on each scale, okay, like all identical, but there is like the body is also like a cylinder, so you need to think about like the overall form, so some of those reflections should change, right? Like why is this so dark here if this is probably the same angle as these ones over here, right? Like this metal and this piece of metal are at like the same angle, right? Orientation in 3D space, they point to the same direction. They should change, right? So yeah, you would have, I don't know, maybe something more like this, right? And then maybe these would be darker as you come around. And then like the edge might be nice and bright, but we're trying to, again, we have to like define like the overall form and shape of the metal first. And then your golds, you're pushing the golds too white. Like it's just too much white on the gold. Something like this, right? Just like bring in some yellow. You don't need a whole lot of white on gold, okay? If you're gonna do white, it's like at one little part, okay? Not like the whole edge. Okay, don't edge highlight the whole edge of the metal like one value, okay? That edge also needs like gradients and stuff inside it. All right. Colin Barnes. Hi, Eric. First off, thank you for doing these feedback sessions. I'm learning loads and I really appreciate you sharing the videos. Here's my request for feedback. I'd like your advice on how to improve the metals. I know they need more non-metallics, all right? I know they need more refinement and sketching style and what happens improve. All right. Okay. I actually think the metals are pretty dang good. Like from a visual impact, right? That helmet looks like metal to me. Those scales look like metal. The shoulder pad mostly looks like metal. That looks like metal, okay? The bore could be better. This could also be a little better, but yeah, this looks pretty dang good. Now, what I will say, okay, is that let's think about orientation. Again, we need to think about like the orientation of stuff. This is right here. Let's imagine his helmet is a whole cylinder, is like a sphere, right? If we were to complete the helmet, the sphere, you have it in like the top center position. Okay. It's in the top center. Let's look at this thing. Yeah, it's in the top center. Very good, right? Okay, let's think about this shape, right? If we were to draw a spear here, okay, top center, not so bad, right? Pretty good. How about this? What's happened? Anybody? It's shifted to the left. Exactly. So, how do we fix it? We need to move it back to the middle. Which one looks more correct? This one or this one? Can we see the difference? It's like the sun is literally moving in the sky when I do this. All right, so just try and be consistent, yeah? Like, that's the important part. You can put them wherever you want as long as you're consistent on each. Now, how to do some of this stuff. Here, I think you just need like some more like spots, right? I can only draw so small with the pen, but like, push the light a little bit more. I think you could play around with more like nicks and stuff on the edge, make it a little bit rougher in spots. Probably would have like little dots here and there. Right, maybe this thing's beat up a little bit and gets like, you know, some wear and tear. No, gold's not wrong. It's right. Gold's in the correct position. And then this thing is like just a really complicated shape, and I would suggest maybe, I don't know, you could look at mine to see how I rendered it. I don't want to sit here and like redraw how to re-render this whole thing, but basically the light should be kind of here. But you can even see in the photograph where like there's getting some highlights like in these positions. Okay, so hey, glad to hear it. I like when the feedbacks trigger some kind of like epiphany in someone else's piece, and you're like, oh, this is what's wrong with mine, right? Yeah, and then just play around with some more damage and stuff. The helmet looks really good, like super good actually. I love all the little scratches and stuff. This could be like way cleaner, but yeah. Very nice. The face, pretty good. Probably, if your light is more centered, probably want just a little bit more light on this side, on this side of the face, right? Probably a little bit more like that. Maybe just get a little bit of light right there, right? Probably want some more light on the ear. The fingers could be a little better shaped. So like a little bit stronger shadow on the bottom of the fingers, especially as it starts to curve down away from the light, right? Like let's see if I can show it, right? Like if I do my hand like this, right? What's happening to the bottom finger, right? The top one's in the light because it's not like flat across, right? The light does, my fingers do have like a subtle curve to them, right? So the top one is in the most light, and then as you go down, they have a little less and less. So same sort of deal happening here, where these lower fingers should probably have a little more shadow on the bottom. Okay, cool. Helpful? Hope so. Next. Paryish. General feedback. Okay. The lighting's pretty good. Volumes seem pretty good. General feedback would just be... Sorry, I was looking at some of this stuff. Looks a little speckly, like some like airbrush artifacts, right? So probably want to clean that up. I think what it's missing is just like, I guess this is a work in progress because you haven't done like any of the belts or anything, but just like general definition stuff would go a long way here, right? Like just cleaning up stuff, right? Like, but I'm guessing a lot of this is like not done. So yeah, if you guys post a work in progress in the feedback channel, like please say like this is work in progress, or like this is the stuff that's not done, because I don't want to sit and correct things that are like, well, yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet. Okay. Like what's going on here, right? Like all this stuff needs to be clean, like all this needs to be cleaned up and like more defined. In terms of the light on him, I think it's pretty good. I think you could push highlights a little more, right? Like I like this highlight here. You could probably have like a bit more highlights on the face, right? Like you haven't painted the eyes or anything yet, so like, but you could definitely like have some more highlighting and stuff around. Like I don't really have highlights on the forehead at all. So everything just feels kind of like smooth right now, and there's like not a whole lot of definition to stuff. Even like here on the body, like all this just feels sort of airbrushy in a way. So like I'd like some more obvious like plane changes and stuff here, right? Like this is not airbrushy, but I feel like other parts of him are, and like this is all very red, but I don't have like the actual shadows. Like all this would basically be in shadow here, right? Like where's the shadow under the neck, some of these like smaller areas. And then yeah, these highlights are nice. I like this stuff. We can push that probably a little bit more, like, oh, let me go brighter. Right, like we could probably push this highlight on his chest more. have quite this intense highlight kind of here running down the chest and pecs, right? Like that shape sort of goes down like that. You'd probably get a bit of highlight like there, right? And then where's the like highlight here? Okay. So, yeah, just, I mean, keep going, right? It's going well. Like the metallics, they could be more refined. Don't quite get the sense of lighting here. Like, so I'm losing some of the like shapes in here, or I'm not quite getting this like cylindrical shape. Okay, to this like vambrace. Where's like the shape of this thing? Yeah, I think just keep pushing. Like it's going pretty well, but don't get yeah, well, big thing is just going to be like defining stuff, right? Okay. How long have we been going? An hour? A little over an hour? All right. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a few minutes. And then we will continue on. Oh. All right, we're back. Hello, are the feedback a free service? No, you must be a Twitch subscriber and join the Discord. And then there's the FAQ section of the Discord, which will give you instructions on how to link your Twitch account to your Discord account, and then you will get access to the Feedback Friday server or channel. All right, got this guy. Some great feedback. Got some great feedback from peeps on the other feedback channels. Sadly, judges were not impressed. Okay, I'm so sorry. But I would love your thoughts on how to take this to the next level. I know that the orientation of the base is completely wrong. That was the first thing I was going to say. And that is too big for what I have actually placed on there. Maybe. It's not too bad. Any advice is much appreciated. All right. Let's take a look. It's like, especially if you use a prime, it's pretty much free. In fact, you're already giving your money to Jeff Bezos. You might as well give it to me for some feedback. Huh? All right. What do we think? It's pretty cool. Pretty well defined. Base is okay. I would say that the kind of like basing the crosses and stuff feel a little out of scale. They're like a little thick. The nails are a little heavy for how lanky and big this figure is. Yes, in case anyone was curious what he was talking about with like the angle of the base, this is what's called like, call it the dagger, right? Like when you place the angle of the, if this is what you want the main view to be when you use a square plinth, like square it up to the front, okay? Instead of at an angle, because people naturally try and view it from one of the like flat sides, so they're never going to have the right orientation for what you want the main view to be, if you want the main view to be like this corner, right? So try and line the figure up to one of the flat sides, okay? This is also the problem with round plinths, which is why you see everyone in Golden Demon with their round plinths always put like a little thing on them to tell the photographers like this is the front, because Golden Demon, when they take photos, they love to pick the most random angles for the photos sometimes. So if you're going to use a round plinth. That's why a lot of people put a little thing on the front of the circular plinth to show like this is the center, or this is the front. All right. In terms of the actual painting, I think it's quite nice actually. Like, yeah, some things could be sharper. Okay. You could definitely have like some thinner lines and stuff separating these elements, right? There could be like some sharper black lining. Paint's a bit fuzzy. I don't know what you used for like a primer, but it's pretty textured. I don't know if this is just your camera or what, but yeah, this is pretty harsh. Might be the figure because the base doesn't look quite like that. How do I feel about it overall? I think overall, like, I'm pretty okay. I like the sort of lines that you have, like the compositional lines. Of like, let me draw bigger. Right? These sort of like compositional lines here. It's pretty nice with him like centered in the middle. It feels pretty good. I think maybe there could be like more depth, so some more stuff like behind him, right? And as opposed to like everything in kind of in front, maybe like a little more surrounding. The paint itself, maybe there could be a bit happening from the camera, or like the actual lighting is causing some of this. I feel like I'm getting some effect from the actual like lighting. The photography is maybe making some of these things brighter than they actually are, and it's enhancing the volume somewhat. But yeah, like one of the things for me would just be to like, try and make some of these things sharper, right? This is a small figure, but like could definitely push the sharpness a little bit here and there. Some of the metallic reflections here, like I think you could go a bit darker, so things like this on the non-metallic, like parts of these legs, you could push the contrast a bit more. It's like you used purple for your black instead of like really pushing into the black. When you're doing parts like this, maybe having a bit more light in some of these areas. All right. Areas like this, right? You want this like line to be nice and defined. So what I would consider here is just like try and like pick some areas that you really want some focus on. So like these sort of corners and stuff, you can push these a little bit more. Right, you've pushed quite bright here. But even on these like these little things, right, you can really like try and push the contrast. When you're dealing with these small models, a lot of it does come down to just like definition, right? So just really trying to push that definition as much as possible, right? So really like nailing in some highlights and stuff is gonna go a long way. Another one is like the belt here, like the contrast of the belt and the bullets are like a little too similar. So I would maybe do something like this. And I would try and like tone down the leather a little bit more so that it feels like more different than the brass. So right now it feels like a little too similar to the brass of the bullets. So the bandolier is like separated. Is it layer lines? It might be. I like the red around the like whatever these metal things are, but then you didn't really do it in some spots. So like I don't really see it around some of these other ones, right? So it's like where is it? Where is it around these? Here you did it, right? It could be a little softer, right? So it's like comes out a little bit more. I think you could do a little bit on the hands also, so like they get a little more reddish on the hands. Maybe like around the neck and stuff a little bit more. Probably more just like on his chest where he's got more of these things, right? And you know, sometimes I don't know what this was for, what contest this was for, but sometimes just model selection can really come down to like, sadly you can, you know, model selection is part of contests too. So like having a figure that can really like show off the paint job can have a lot to do with it. Probably, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like you're taking really strong light from above just based on this shadow here. Okay, so I don't think that's painted on. I think that's the photography. Same with like all this shadow in here, I think is the photography. So this is one of those ones that I'd like to see in hand just to see how much of this is like, how much the photo is kind of helping here. Like how much of this is like, oh, those are layer lines, aren't they? How much of this is like being helped out by the photograph and how much of this is like painted on. But I think it's generally pretty good and you're doing well. Just try and like push the definition more, try and add more nuance and interest here and there. And yeah, the composition is definitely a thing. Okay. All right. Sure. Wish I could have given you a little more on that one, but Scott. Who else? Who's next? Oh man, we got a lot, don't we? All right. Papa Singe. Can you give me feedback on the other views? He's reworked the front view. So here's where he's at on the front view. I would say things are definitely more balanced on the front view now. Wouldn't you guys say? If you remember last week, don't love that reflection on that helmet. It's a little off, but I would put more light on the other side of the helmet. But the actual figure's looking pretty great. And then we're doing something on the backside. So introducing this colder light, but that feels like it's getting very green. From the other side, it's like this bluish light from the other side. That works pretty well. I like it on the wizard. I don't know if it's consistent enough is the thing for me. Okay, so it's like the wizard's cloak looks quite good, right? Hello. Carlos Magnus? What is that symbol? Z Event 2024? Don't know what that is. But hello, welcome to the stream. Yeah, I think it's working well on let's just say the wizard character, right? But I don't feel like the lighting is the same on the other ones. Okay, so it feels a little inconsistent right now. I feel like the wizard has way more light on him from behind. So I would either tone it down a little bit on the wizard or push it a little bit more on the other guys, right? Because right now this value is very strong. Where on the other dudes it's kind of too subtle, maybe. It's also a little sharp, like on his hair and stuff. Yeah, I think it's too strong on the wizard at the moment. I like the effect, but I think it's too much. All right. So maybe tone it down a little on him and push it a little bit more on the others. And it's maybe a little too green. I think it's probably a little too strong on this green also compared to the other parts, right? So I would tone that green down a little. It's like a little too minty for like this yellowish green, right? It's like, again, we try and compare values, right? Well, right now, let's come on. Oh my god, Discord's frozen. It froze. Right, if we compare to here, I feel like that blue light is like stronger than the light from the front. Where on the rest of the characters, the blue light is like, or that main light source should be brighter. So look at the values. This is something I would check in black and white. I've already given quite a lot of feedback, so I don't want to sit here drawing over top of everything. But I would check the values in black and white and then see how you're feeling about them. Okay. All right. But front looks really good. Really nice. Yeah, like this bounce light is too intense on his elbow right there. Like it's too much. His cloak is not like glowing green to bounce a light onto his arm like that. Okay. Nice job. Cool. Marcus. Thanks a lot for Feedback Fridays. Learning this is a piece for SMC/GD Europe. I don't expect to get anything, but want to improve. Probably change the backdrop a lot since I feel it doesn't work right now. Right now, I like how it's turning out, but about the helmet, it needs to have higher values, more focus. Okay, so one thing I'd ask is, what up with the gaming base? And what up with so the backdrop is interesting, but I don't feel, all right, let's just take this for a second. Okay, let's jump in. Let's look at this. So, how do you guys, does he feel like he fits in this scene? Anyone? No? I don't think so either. He's way more saturated than the background. I know the base doesn't help, but he's far too saturated compared to the compared to the background. Another thing about the background, what's up with this? Is this the horizon? Why is the horizon... All right. Catch you later, Ethan. I'll get to yours. Right. This line here, this is the horizon. The horizon is above his head right now. So the horizon needs to come like way down. Probably somewhere down here where this like tree log thing is. Okay. And then the scale is also kind of all over the place. Right. So this like branch here with a bit of atmosphere, what is it doing? It's just like coming in off the side. All right, you got these lines, and the lines are just kind of everywhere at the moment. They're just like here and there, and they're just going in all directions, and there's nothing really to like guide the viewer's eye. Okay, so instead we want to think about like how can we frame. Let's do this. Let's take this purple. Okay. We're just gonna paint the background out. So this is our sky. Now another thing about backgrounds is typically you want to increase the light a bit more towards the lower part of the background. Okay, so you want typically a little more light around the figure to help like silhouette him. Okay, so I'm going to push the light a little bit more lower. All right, something like this. And now we've got the like horizon a bit more where it should be. Okay. Right, because we're not like looking down on him so that the horizon is over his head. Okay. Now we can take some of these like brownish gray colors, right? And we can create something that like starts to frame him. So I'll erase it, but like imagine there's like a tree here and it's like coming up over his head, and we're like trying to draw the like compositional lines of like where we want, right? So like we can play around with your sort of shape you had of this tree branch, right? But we can use it in a way that like follows the shape of the character, right? So it's like this horn thing like continues and grows over. You also don't want any of these like dead lines that just like stop, right? You want to like carry the viewer's eye. So maybe there's like, you do something like this, right? And we can darken this in. Okay, so we're like continuing with the flow. Okay, and then maybe there's like some branches that come out. Then we can play around with so we're sort of framing him, right? Then we can play around with some like lighter tones. Okay, so there's this thing called atmospheric, like you have atmospheric haze. Candy Crafting, hello, thanks for the tier 1 sub. Okay, so what happens is you take more of this color, and then as you get further into the distance it becomes something in between, right? So then you can start to like create these other plants and branches that get further into the distance, right? To create more perspective, and you have like trees that are harder to see, okay? Then you can like shadow the top a little bit to create more. And then we could push maybe this even more, right? So we can push the light a little bit more to help frame him even some more, and maybe there's some light that comes in through the branches and stuff. This like haze, this like fog that comes in, right? That is not a perfect drawing. I'm just trying to like give you a sense of, you know, motion and sort of colors and atmosphere. Have I been drawing on the wrong layer the whole time? Oops. Anyways, and then like delete that. So like I can delete that afterwards. Okay, so now I've kind of like put him something that frames him a little bit better and gives like a sense of direction. All right. Now, but we still have the problem of like all of these tones, they don't fit him at all, right? So like we've got these blues and then this yellow, these like yellowish lights, these like really bright yellow lights. But what is the light of the scene, right? Well, everything has this like bluish haze on it. Yeah. So like, doesn't that mean that his lights should be like more bluish? Maybe it's something like this, right? Does this put him into the environment better? And then what do we have in the shadows? You know, what's happening to the shadows? They're like these reddish grays, right? So we're creating these like browns, almost purpley tones. Okay, it's like sort of this magenta kind of thing happening, right? So instead, but what's happening with these, right? They're like really strong green, right? So what if instead we use something like this? Yeah. Okay. So we play around with that, like this purplish tone. And this purplish tone helps him start to fit into the environment even more. Okay, so when you paint, like, I don't know if the background was like an afterthought or whatnot, but when you're painting this character, right? Like everything you paint needs to have consideration for the environment, right? So like, you can't just paint the guy and then toss him in, right? You need to consider like, okay, well, this is metal and like you're getting warm, but all the lights in the environment are getting cold, right? So that means the lights of your scene need to get cold, right? So everything is relative to the environment. And you can do cold lights on a model like this. They totally work, right? You just have to be conscious of like what kind of colors you're using. Okay. And you can use all these little greens and things. Like these like sort of camo, these what you would call like camo greens, right? These sort of colors like this. these like swampy greens, right? Instead of this like super intense lime green. Yeah, Renan, but this is exactly what sort of accomplishing here, right? These like foresty yellow, yeah, like these camo greens, right? And then you still can like push into the teal whites, but like you don't need this like ultra saturated green to give a feeling of green when your scene has all these like grays and blues and stuff. Okay. So that's kind of the idea, right? So be conscious of what kind of environment you're trying to paint, and then also, yeah, be aware of like how to frame the character and like the sort of lines and things that you want to follow in order to push the attention where you want, because the background is just to put the character in a place and to help silhouette them, right? It's like kind of the two functions that the background is achieving. Okay? Give them a setting, enhance their silhouette, right? So you need to serve both those purposes with the background. And yeah, don't over detail the background. That's another thing. I see people do that a lot, which I don't really see it. Didn't really see it on yours, but I do see it from time to time where people tend to over detail the background. All right. Hi, Eric. I'm struggling with NMM. Okay. The sword, I'm not convinced with it. Also, could you give me some advice on what else should I improve? Maybe the facial expression. She's supposed to be disgusted. Okay. Pretty good. Not bad. So, again, we're going to come back to our very first discussion of like shape here. Okay. I feel like the dress and the cloak, like the cloak thing, her fur pelt, whatever this is, right, has like quite nice shape to it. I can take and see the like. I'm gonna draw orange because it's easier to see, right? Like I can see these forms, right? Like the forms are quite clear to me. Okay. What I don't really see on her is form, okay? What I see is just like, just skin, right? And it's pretty flat, okay? This, I see form, right? I see like the shapes of the dress, right? Not really getting that on the face. So, what can we do? We have to give some further shape. I feel like you're a little timid to push some of the shadow on her compared to the contrast on her dress. Like the skin just doesn't have that contrast, right? So like don't be afraid to, really push some shape and on the shadows and stuff. Okay, this is probably too dark over here. I know you're doing this kind of like eyeshadow thing, but right? Like push the shapes, guys. Do not be scared. Okay? Give some shape to these like things here. Give her some shadow, right? Like she's an older lady, she can have be a little bit more defined. Right? Her nose has like no shadow under it. Okay? Like yeah, her eyes are like huge at the moment. I would take that down. Okay. Also, they're way too white. Like this is like skin is not really like this. It's like her eyes aren't really like that. It's more like skin tone kind of thing. Okay. So like tone that down. Only the like white dot should be like white. Right? Look at me. Are my eyes like glowing white in my head? No. Now I'm not saying you have to go like black on the shadows, but yeah, you need to push more, right? And there needs to be there's just no clearly defined form. It's this problem of just like everything's got to be smooth. Like no, some things need to be smooth, right? Other things need to be defined. Okay? So try and make some elements related like her nostrils should be pretty dark, right? Okay, where's right? She's got some wrinkles, give her some wrinkles. Okay. Another one is probably she would have some stronger bags under her eyes. And then she needs some color, right? So try and put some color in the skin because there's like no real color at the moment. Hmm? See, like the shape comes out, right? Okay. Now, if you want to like push her expression some more, like, yeah, you can enhance some of these wrinkles a little more. As I think if you wanted to make her more like looking down at someone, right? So instead of that. She's like literally looking down her nose at them. Right, the position of the eyes can change a lot, the feeling. Like here she's like looking up and forward, and here she's like literally like looking down her nose at someone, right? Like, disgust. You can wrinkle up her nostrils a little more if you want to make her appear more disgusted, I guess. Right? Like, you know, you get this like, you know, this facial expression, right? Like this pinching of the. It doesn't have to be like super intense, but a bit of that like pinch can help a lot. Right. All right. As for the metallic, it's okay. Right. I think it's just maybe kind of boring at the moment. Try and like introduce some other reflections, like change up the angle a little bit. Right. Some secondary reflections will help a lot. Probably wouldn't do this dark. Like I would probably push this light all the way to the top of the blade. Maybe not the pure white, but like let it come up so that it looks like it's not like curving in. Okay. And then yeah, this is just like a bit. That's a little bit of that same problem I was talking about. Some of these like lines, they're just all the same, like all the way down. It's like too white, too intense, right? You can play around with this a little bit more, give this a little more shape, right? Some of this light could come up a little higher. These could be much sharper. And then you can also play with some shape like in these. But yeah, it's pretty good. But yeah, try and introduce some like secondary reflections. Does the lighting on the dress? Maybe. I'm not in love with this like red light on the dress. I don't think it really adds much. In fact, it kind of distracts me. Like, I think I would probably get rid of it. I don't think it's really adding anything to the scene. I can see you're like kind of doing it, but maybe just like, maybe not quite that strong if you want to do like a little bit of like a purpley kind of thing. Like, not even that much. I think something like this maybe. I think that sort of works enough as opposed to like this like red tone, sort of weird. I don't know how much it would affect the metal. It might like reflect kind of like here or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, shape. Shape is everything. Get the volumes right. Right, like where are the shadows under her arm and hand? Okay, but let's go. Ethan. updated, and now, did you upload this twice? Did he upload it again? No, okay. Just looked at it before. Now asking for feedback. Still some refinement to do on the back, but mostly done, minus some grass and maybe some blood on the basin axe. All right, let's look at him. This is working quite well for me. This looks pretty good. Okay, I can see some issues here. That looks quite nice. I think what's happening... All right, let's... I don't have much to say about the front view. I think the front view works pretty well. I do see a little bit kind of here. I think you can see it pretty well. Let's look at this view. So, what do we see? What looks kind of off to you guys? Anything? Let's do our trick. Yeah, the darker red does look off, doesn't it? What happened to it when I turned on the black and white mode? Yeah, the value's too similar, right? So what we need to do, instead of this like wine red sort of thing, we need to go with like a dark red, okay? Maybe even shift it slightly purplish, right? So instead of, let's put it underneath, okay? So what we want to see is something like deep red, all right? And then you can push the light up from there, but we need like a strong dark red and not this sort of like flat red that you've got, this like flat grayish red, right? I want to see some like, let me see some shadow, you know? Because the gray has shadow, but the red is like super flat when it comes to like the shadow side. It just like doesn't have the depth and intensity of color that I would expect to see like in the shadow areas. Okay. So like, let's really try and like take a really intense dark red, some sort of like crimson or something. And really like push this deep red shadow, okay? Now let's look at what happens. All right? Does that feel better? One just feels sort of gray, and this feels like an actual shadow, right? I think the same could be said a little bit for the face here with the green. I think you could go slightly darker, maybe with some kind of ink or something. with these like, I don't even know what sort of color, these like sort of dark kind of tones here, these like deep yellowish tones, something in the transition to like intensify that core shadow a little bit more. I like the color you sort of have under here, right? I'm kind of missing it in like the transition, like you're shifting to the like secondary light too soon and you don't have enough of the core shadow. Okay, so a little bit, just push that like core shadow just a little bit more before you start to transition into the like secondary light source. And then the last thing is going to be to come back with some sort of black and like try and really outline some of this stuff. Okay, I say some kind of black, it doesn't need to be pure black, right? But something to help define some of these, like there's no definition around some of these stitches and things, like, right? These are like finishing touches that'll really push that definition. Okay, like this is okay, but could even be a little more, especially on the shadow side, like it's getting lost once you shift to the other side. Yeah, the chains are super cool. The chains are really well done. In fact, I think a lot of the metallics are really nice on this guy. And I like the color of the lights of the red, but you gotta push that shadows on the red more. And yeah, get some more, get a little bit more definition on these. Okay, just a touch, you know, but like I want to see those, you know. I want to see those shapes, the details, right? Same with the teeth here, right? Like there's just not enough like kind of outlining and stuff around them. It could be more intense, right? Could be a little clearer. But yeah, this stuff is good. Maybe even in between these scales a little bit in the dark areas, you could push the line work a little bit more. Not too much, but just like give a little bit more on those. Okay. Well, that, I think it's going well. The base is cool. All that stuff's cool. Just, yeah. Push that shadows. Push that definition. Push the shadows on the red. Get a little more intense shadows on the core shadow of the green. And I think it'll help a lot. Okay? Geist, hello? Alright, oh, you uploaded it again. Alright, well, Geist, we'll come back to you. Hello, Eric. First of all, insightful feedback. It's very interesting. Learned a lot. I had the chance to participate in a workshop with you in Lyon last year. Okay. I've completed part of the work, but I'd like your opinion before painting the details. Sure. I looked at this earlier, and I think the painting on it, like the technical painting on it, is pretty good. But this miniature is pretty complicated, okay? We're going to do the thing again, everybody, and I'm going to keep doing this, but in a different way this time. Okay? What happens? Let's look at the materials, right? We've got purple, orange, and like cyan, right? Those three color sort of things. We also got some yellow, like some gold. Okay? What happens when I make it black and white? Yeah, especially on the hat, right? Now, here's not bad, right? You can see there's a value difference between the sleeve, the cyan sleeve, and the purple, right? And the orange, this cuff thing on her here is a little different, but the hat is just all becomes identical, right? It's just all the same value of gray. Okay, so let's turn that off for a second. Let's make another layer. Let's stick to the like with the black and white mode. And what'll happen if we just start to we're just going to go around and we're just going to intensify things a little bit, right? We're going to push the value. You need more contrast, huh? And this time I do mean value contrast, but not in terms of volume, in terms of material, okay? So we need to separate the materials a bit more. We need to introduce some like different shades of material, right? This purple, like we can create more contrast between elements just by making it an overall darker shade of purple, right? So right now I just want to push this so that it's like clearer, and right, it'll make these little blue stitched elements like pop out more, right? So now there's some nice contrast with these like sleeves. This is pretty good. It could be just a little, not that much, right? Could be just a little bit more, right? And then on these parts, what's happening? Oh, well, this is the same, right? So maybe these sections just need to be darker. Yeah. How's that feel? Better already? Like in terms of like readability, yeah, shape, like things are popping out more, like shapes are more clear. I don't know what's going on down here with this part. Let me turn the color back. Okay, so this is all kind of orange. Right? I'm not saying make it black like this, but in terms of like just overall, right? Like you can play around with the color or the values or whatnot, but we need to separate the elements more in terms of like, okay, this is just a darker element in order to have things like pop out on their own. Yeah, even like the gray of even her hair is like sort of similar, right? So maybe doing some kind of darker hair might help, right? So just be careful, like not to make everything so samey, right? We want certain things to be lighter, certain things to be darker, okay? And that's going to help make everything, especially when you have so many different materials and stuff, it's going to make everything a lot more readable in contrast, right? See how her hood just kind of becomes one thing, and then this, now you can like see their shape involved, right? Or these like separate elements. Okay, so separate. Give contrast between your materials, all right? All right, here's Geist. I don't know why this is huge. Okay, hold on. Bruh. I'll do my best. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the skin here with all these like patchiness. There's like red patchiness all over the place. Anyway, I think the thing you really need to work on is just being a little more clean, like separating things, right? Because right now I just am having a really difficult time like seeing what's going on. Okay? Like I don't have any clear indication of like there's a line here like separating from his leg, right? I don't know where that like hair kind of stops and ends. Don't quite understand this like tan, right? But there's, yeah, I just need to see a bit more like shape, right? Like, or not shape, but like definition between elements. Like, why what color is his hair? Is it gray? Is it black? Like, I don't know where his neck is. So just try to be a bit cleaner here with like, like pushing the definition between elements. Like, let that light come to the shoulder and be separated by the necklace. Like, where's the light here? What's going on here? The eye patch has like no separation. The mouth, like I don't have shape in the mouth. This picture is kind of blurry, so it's sort of hard to see, but like just defining things more, like what's going on with the mouth here. Like, is there some kind of cast shadow, or I feel like I'm getting cast shadows because it looks like this is casting a shadow on this piece that's just base coated. So again, the photo might be throwing me off quite a bit. I don't know how much of this shadow is like painted on and how much of this shadow is like actually there, because he's clearly like casting a shadow this way, right? But yeah, like just try and, instead of like all this color and stuff, just try and get like these shapes right first. I don't know what's up with the color. You can add the color in later, get the volumes right, and then you can always introduce new color. Why does it say connecting to chat? Oh, weird. His hand is cut off at the wrist. Doesn't have the hand on. Like, you can see the peg where the hand is supposed to be. So there's something missing. I don't know. Yeah, I just need like a bit more crispness, right? Like I need more clarity. I'd suggest base coating some things, trying to get like shape and stuff in. Like always focus on like the bigger elements first. Like get the overall form and stuff in before you try and like start adding all these little details, right? Like the overall shape and definition should be your number one priority. Then you can start introducing like texture and like micro details, right? It's so common to get lost in the little nuances early when you haven't gotten like the main shape in first, right? Like you're painting non-metallic metal over here, but then like this whole leg piece isn't base coated, you know? So, yeah, focus first, right? Before painting detail, right? Focus on the big picture. Always working big to small, right? Thick to thin, big to small. Broad to little brushstrokes. No, I do not. And you know what? The we'll call it the Richard Gray approach of fully painting an arm before moving on. Richard would tell you that that's a bad idea also. He just does it because he can. All right, Mike. How many more we got? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. All right, I'm cutting it off here. This Scott, we didn't do one for you already. So we'll cut it off at Scott, but I'm going to take another quick break, and when I come back, we'll finish the rest of them. All right, be right back. Howdy. Yes, I do have a Nova badge to give away. I will make a YouTube post, like one of those community whatever posts, and an Instagram story linking to it. And then you can probably leave a comment on there, and then I will check to see if you are a subscriber, and I will give it away to one of my subscribers. So, free. You don't have to be a Twitch sub. You can just follow, subscribe on YouTube. And, yeah, get the equivalent of an art first badge, so you can use it on whatever thing you want, class or whatnot. I might ask people to like, what class are you looking forward to or whatever. Yes, I will be giving them away. I will give it away probably on Monday before the it's just a code. So it's a discount code you apply at checkout, and you can use it then. All right, Mike, we got a Night Lord here. So, pretty good. It's coming along. Pretty sharp. Okay. What do I see? What do my elf eyes see? Well, I can point out one thing real fast. You guys spot anything? Anybody spot anything weird? Oh, the right shoulder pad. There is on the shoulder pad, and also there's a thing that's just like not done. Yeah, this shoulder pad's not done. Look. It's right next to the tuss. Why is that blue, but it's gold over here, and all this is gold? Oops. Oopsie. Yep, strip it and start over. Unacceptable. Fix that bad boy. Yeah, I also don't know what's going on right here. Fix this, fix this. What's up with stuff being on there? Is just the front painted? What's going on back here? All right, so big thing for me I'm seeing right now is that like some of your light feels a little inconsistent. Like I would like some more light in some of these areas that are like more upward facing. Okay. I'd like a stronger shine on some of these parts that are like facing towards the viewer. All right. You can actually lighten quite a bit of this stuff. Obviously this shoulder pad's not done, but like we want light here. Okay. If this light is sort of here, it should reflect similarly up here. This, you've got a light here and sort of here, but then it just like dies down here. So this could probably be lighter. And then something in between, kind of here. Right, separate those planes. Freehand wise, like the freehand's very cool. The shoulder pads look good. I like some of the like white, these edges, but like if there's a white edge here, this is the same, so there should be like a bit more light there. Okay. Just try and like define some of this stuff a little more. I also know from experience seeing Mike's models in hand that they tend to look a little more contrasted in photo than they do in hand. They're a little more subtle in hand. So Mike, what I'm going to tell you is to go a little further than your gut tells you to, because they tend to be a bit more soft in hand. Okay, so push a little more than you think on some of these edges to like really push that shine. Right, like all these rivets and stuff have to get done. The helmet's quite nice. I like this. What I would say is I would like this volume to be like a little more clear. Like this is on top, so I think it would make a little sense to define that a little bit more. Come on, let me select a color. There we go. Right, something like this. Do something with this thing. I probably would do just like the red, like you did. Whatever, I'm just going to paint it in red just to show you, but I would do that. But in general terms, I think it's going quite nice. This stuff is nice. Paint some stitches, right? I would just grab like the color that you have here and probably do something like this. Right? Like define these stitches. Here, I want to see these edges hit a little bit more so that this detail isn't lost back here, right? Something like that. Yeah, and don't be so dark around some of these rivets. Like, you have a tendency to really, like, completely shadow around the rivets. Like, what you want to do, you didn't really do it on this one that much. What you want to do is you want to paint the surface like the rivet isn't there, okay? So you paint it as if the rivet's not there, and then you paint the rivet on top. So like if you're doing this surface and there's a light like around this, right? That light's going to stay there, and then you paint the dark around the rivet and then highlight the rivet, right? As opposed to like otherwise that the rivet loses definition and you start to lose some of its shape, right? So try and not lose the shape of the rivet by painting it too dark. Like here, this horn, right? I'm losing a bit of the shape around the horn because you've painted it so dark around the horn that I can't really, it like starts to get lost in the metal. Okay. The other thing I will say is like I don't know what the base is going to be. It looks like there's an Eldar head, but you could include, there's quite a lot of lower reflections on this guy, right? So depending on what you're going to do with that, like you can start to think about like, okay, I've got this like lower plane on this knee pad that's pretty much black, right? It's like really dark. Well, what color is the base going to be, and how is that going to affect the color of the metal? And maybe it ends up being something like this, and you can play around with some of these like lower reflections, right? In order to, I'm just giving you a sense of what it could possibly be, but some of these like lower facing reflections to like, okay, well maybe it's, I don't know, gray or whatnot. Right, so you can vary up the coloration of the metal and introduce a new color into this in order to like give a sense of what's happening with the base. Guys, I would recommend to you to at least like, unless you have a clear picture in your mind of what the base is going to be from the beginning, like just slap a color on the base in order to like get a sense of how the figure is working with the rest of with the base also, right? So that you have some sort of interaction between the figure and the base, so you don't run into the problem that we had earlier with the backdrop, where it just like they look like they're two completely separate things, you know? All right. So that's my recommendation, Mike. Obviously, it's going pretty well, but keep pushing. And yeah, try and define a few things a little bit more. Like, don't be afraid to push some of the definition a little bit further in some places, you know? Okay. Like here, this light on his knee pad, this reflection should be pretty strong, right? Because what happens is when you look at him like this, it's like, right? Things get lost a little bit, things a little more defined, all right? Captain Jack Harlock, hello, thanks for following. Richard. Overall thoughts. My overall thoughts is that it could just be cleaner. Yeah. Clean it up, all right? You don't need this much white to highlight this green either. Okay? Don't overdo it. Right, like this is messy, okay? Like define the fingers, right? I'm losing some shape down here. Probably don't need quite this much. You're like pushing some of the highlights, the edge highlights too far and losing some shape on other things, right? So it's like I'm losing some shape on like the arm, right? Sometimes you have to kind of overdo it, maybe not quite that much, in order to create some definition in like the muscles and stuff here. But then you're like really pushing the highlights like super extreme, where they don't need to be quite that much, right? It's really easy to overdo some of this stuff. But just try and like get these lines, you know, cleaned up. Okay? What's happening here? This is a mess. Probably a little bit much on the cheeks also. Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be open, man. They gotta literally build a museum. That shit ain't fast, you know? They're working on it. All right, Richard. So that's my feedback for you. Just like work on general, like don't get too bogged down in um like creating all this like hyper contrast. Just like make it clean, you know? Just well defined is much more important than trying to like get hyper defined and detailed. All right? Well, I want it to be defined, but like overly like thinking about too much about like pushing the extreme highlights and stuff. Contrast, like, see the like I actually reduced the contrast on the skin, but it's better defined and those lines are cleaner, right? So readability. Readability is king on small figures. Mark Fizzle. Hi, Eric. I just started a new competition piece. Still a long way to go, but I figured I'd get some feedback along the way. This is what I'm saying, guys. You got to provide me with some like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm still working on. Because if you don't tell me, then I don't know. Right? Like I can see that skull's not done, but like, is the leather done? You know? It looks good. It's going pretty well. Like that leg's not done. Clearly, this claw's not done. I'm assuming the faces are done, but like his teeth are done, but I'm guessing his aren't. So, I mean, in terms of like general volumes, highlighting skills, like this leather texture is quite nice. Could see needing a little more definition around some of these parts. What the heck is going on with his face? Why is his ear like coming out of the side of his head? It's weird. It's a weird figure. I swear these trolls are like the ugliest thing that... I'm assuming this is a GW model. Some sort of chaos troll or something. These are like the ugliest models they make. Intentionally so, I'm guessing, but they're so bizarre. Yeah, the face is looking good. Like blending and stuff looks quite good. Like this looks like rock. I'd like to know sort of where you're going with it. Like, what's the idea? What sort of base? What kind of, like, what else you plan to do with this guy? But right now, like, I think it's going quite good. I think maybe one thing I'm seeing is like, I'd like to maybe vary up like the tone like in the mouth and stuff, right? Like the right now the gums and the tongue and everything feel kind of the same, so I think you could probably like at least like change the color a little bit here, like maybe it's slightly more red, like a little more definition around like these parts, right? Like try and separate the gum line from the mouth a little bit more, right? It's like kind of this, it's kind of samey at the moment. So I can't really see like where the mouth ends and the gums begin. You could probably include some of this sort of pinkish color like around the eyes and stuff. That might be a little more interesting. This guy I quite like, but yeah, see how on him you did like this sort of purplish around the lips. It's quite subtle, but like I don't quite pick up some of that up here, right? Like I don't quite pick it up like around the mouth up here. So I would like to see some more of that. Like all of this probably needs to be much lighter. Right, you need some light up here. It's so weird. So weird model. But yeah, it's going well. Some of this is a little bizarre, right? Where it's like, I don't know what's happening with the ear here. Like, is it separated from the neck? If it is, like, I can't quite see it. I assume it is. But, like, his ear is quite pink, and then his is, like, not. So you probably want to push a little more light in the ear here so that it's a little more clear, like, where that line is. Right? He's got these, like, strong highlights on his face, but he doesn't have a lot of highlights on his ear. I would also recommend probably pushing some highlights here, like, all around the mouth. I would just try and draw more attention to the faces in general because they're so bizarrely shaped. They can be a little hard to like read, right? They like the shape of them gets very lost in the model itself. Right, like if I zoom out like this, you can clearly see the shape of this guy's face. But what the heck happens to here, right? It's like this whole like blob section here is just like, hey, what's going on? Right, so try and separate that out a little more. Like it was, boy, is this red? So question on this troll, if the skin was glossy, what would you do to show that? So anytime something is glossy, let's look at glossy objects. This is glossy, right? It's not super gloss. Come on, focus. Right? You can see the shine in it quite well. Let's see the difference between this label and the bottle. This is glossy. This is not. This is satin, right? So glossy, the shines, the highlights are more clear and intense. On satin objects, the highlights are more diffused. Okay. That's the big difference. So if you want to paint something to look glossy or wet or whatever, you need to make the highlights like sharper. Right, let's say you're doing the tongue and you want the tongue to look wet, right? Or a tentacle or something. Well, if you want that tongue to look wet, right? You put sharp highlights on it in a way that makes it look wet, right? Right, if this is wet, you get like a really sharp shine along it, okay? Or like these boils, are they glossy? They get like a sharp shine. Claws, whatever, you know? All right, cool. Would have liked to give you more, but need to see how it's going. Yeah, that ear is so weird, dude. Lou Miniatures. Hi, I painted this bus trying to experiment a bit with cast shadows and got stuck, especially trying to manage NMM on the shadow side. Didn't Carrillo paint this figure? Probably a good example to look at. On the shadow, this side. Talking about over here, I guess. All right, well, let's look at the other one. Let's look at this. NMMs. I assume you're probably looking at Creels a little bit based off of some of like the colors and stuff in the non-metallics. Cast shadows, though. Right now, to be honest, I'm not really seeing any. I mean, sort of see where you're doing it like a bit around the eyes and stuff. But if I was to remove the color, let's remove the color, right? We'll do the thing. We're going to do the thing, guys. Time to do the thing. Okay. Where are the cast shadows? Can we draw the shapes of the light? Okay, well, I have a light here and light here, but where's it stop? It kind of just continues in one continuous shape. Maybe the line is there. Like I'm trying to draw the Terminator. Here I can kind of see it, but then I've got this shape and this shape and this shape. I'm like, what's this shadow from? Right? So when you're doing this, right? And on like the armor, I've got like nothing. Okay. when you're doing this, you have to be really clear with your shapes, right? Your light and shadow shapes. So like if his nose, right? Well, there should be a shadow under his nose, okay? If the light's coming in this way, there should be a shape of his cheekbone, right? His mouth should probably be in the light. Okay, well then his beard's probably going to cast a shadow across his neck like this, right? And then this would all be in light unless the light stops here and like... So I'm not getting a sense of the lighting direction right now, okay? All right, time to time out, Richard. It's got 10-minute timeout. Just it was too much, all right? So now we're looking at this side, right? Like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of shape, but like the neck doesn't really make any sense, right? I'm not seeing like a clear shape of his, of like maybe his hairline is supposed to be casting a shadow here. All right, let's look at the back. No, I gotta go to Discord. Right, like if we look at this, guys, like where is the, and what's happening with like his cheek here, right? Where is that casting his shadow from? So, okay, so he's got one like going across his face, and it's like casting a shadow over his shoulder. So now it looks like the light is coming in from the right? Okay, I see what's happening now, or supposed to be happening. All right, so interesting. Okay, let's go back. So the light is supposed to be coming in from this way. And this piece here is casting a shadow across his neck, right? And then this is in shadow because the light's coming in from the right. This is in shadow. Yeah. Okay. It's starting to make more sense now, but now the face doesn't make any sense. Okay? Because why is this all dark? If the neck is lighting up from the right, that means the face should be lighting up from the right also. But the brightest part of his nose is on the left side. Okay? And then, so we need to like rework the face. Okay? So let's do that real quick. Okay, what does that, so that means, right, like all, all of this should be in light unless part of his helmet shadows over top. Okay. This shadow would be quite strong. And actually it would come up higher than this. Yeah. It would like, because the side of his face, or the more the front of his face, and that means this part of his nose would actually be in shadow because the light's coming in from the right. So actually the side plane of his face is in the light, and the frontal plane of his face is in shadow. All right. So now we have to pull some of these like mid-tones here, start to soften some of this stuff. That highlight wouldn't quite be there. The side of his nose would actually be basically in light, and then as it comes to that part there, right, this starts to be in shadow now. Okay, does the direction of the light start to make more sense, right? Now maybe this now his hair now casts some shadow across like this. And then where would the highlights be? Well, now the highlights would be like more on the side of his face. Okay. That also probably means like that quite a lot of this should be way lighter, right? It's just too dark at the moment for like to make it clear that like parts of this is supposed to be in light, right? So like if it's in light, man, make it in light, right? What about the helm? Are the points on the gold in a memo wrong now? No, not necessarily. I mean, they should probably be over more. They should probably be like, if the light's coming in from the right, they should probably be further over. It's not necessarily wrong, and that changes depending on the like main viewing angle. So right. So now if we look at like the value sketch, right? Does the direction of the light make more sense now? Yeah, so it's like coming over his shoulder, right? He's like this and it's coming like this, right? Okay. So yeah, just try and be consistent with the lighting direction. Okay. And that's going pretty well. Yeah. Next. Hey Eric, Mirage Builds. We'll have some feedback on the atmosphere trying to capture on this work in progress bust. Having days of hunting the monster on his saddle, he just stepped out of the dungeon into a cold, snowy, but sunny environment. The violet glow comes from the magical cave he just stepped out of. The teal reflections are meant to be the snow, and there's a weak, desaturated light source coming from above his back. Okay. That's pretty cool. It's maybe a little much. I mean, it's definitely like magic-y, but I don't know if I believe it's coming from a cave or something. Yeah, this is not a bust, by the way. So, are you guys getting cold from this? Anything at all? No, me either. All right. Me either. I hate that it does the black. I don't want you to do the black. But I want those shadows to be colder. Right? Not too blue. Shift everything just a little bit. How about now? How warm it is? Now that I've made this adjustment, like, we're here. See how warm everything feels? It's like super warm. And now I don't know if this is a white balance on your camera, but this is cold. This is warm. Yeah? Like everything is, right? It's like purpley. All the shadows are purpley. So we've got a shift, right? Now they're like teal. Yeah. So the overall ambience is, if he's outside, right, should be, well, first of all, what color is snow mostly going to reflect? Anyone? Yes, thank you, Richard. Someone's timeout is up. The rainbow magical sky. No. Yeah, it's gonna... So, it could reflect yellow if it's indirect sunlight, right? But most likely it's gonna reflect more bluish. Because the sky is blue, the sun's gonna reflect, or the snow's gonna reflect the sky, which is bluish, right? So you're gonna end up with probably a bluish reflections coming from up from the snow, right? So your overall ambience is going to be quite bluish, right? So you want your shadows to shift quite cold, okay, in order to give that, like, to cool everything down, right? If we look, let's look at a snow scene. Okay, we're just gonna look at a picture. Yeah. Here's snow on a sunny day. What's the dominant color you see? It's probably like a teal. This is like teal blue sort of color, right? So it's just the sky reflecting blue. So there's just blue everywhere. Okay, so we need to like add that blue. Now you can have the like magenta purpley on the back, but we've got to shift the shadows much more cold. I think like the volume rendering stuff is quite nice, to be honest. I don't have too much to say about that. Let me go back to this real quick. It also feels like quite dark, but then you can shift the lights like slightly more yellow if you want. But yeah, really punch in some more blue in the shadows. or change the idea, right? Because it's not giving away snow right now. I think like the volume rendering and stuff is pretty good. There might be some details on his face that are a little too sharp. But yeah, it's looking good. Let me look at the back real fast. I think the hair and stuff, like this looks great. Like the volume and stuff is pretty rendered. This is probably a little too much down here, but this stuff is all kind of working. I like the hands. Demon head works pretty well. The boar's working pretty good. Yeah, I think it's coming along nice in terms of, I don't have too much to say about like the rendering and stuff right now. I think if you wanted to, you could also push a little more blue, like if it's supposed to be like a daytime scene, right? Like you could push a little more bluish tones into like the upward facing reflections of the metals, right? Get some of that sky in there. It's like everything is like purple for some reason. It's like, even though there's, yeah, the purple is supposed to be coming from the back, like there's just like purple tones mixed in everything, which can work. I don't think it's wrong. But like if we're going for an outside daytime scene, like there should probably be more bluish reflections, right? Yeah, keep going. Either change the idea, right? So like alter your idea to fit what you've painted and keep going, like, but with a new perspective, or like push the change it up, you know? All right, next. Cote. Came to this. Yeah, this stuff's working pretty good. All right, so he's having some other issues, or wants to know how the other stuff is going. So, I'm going to touch on the skin a little more, just because I think it's quite good at the moment, but so you're just like metallics, right? This stuff is going fine. Like, you need to do more details. There's too much black, like in the fins and stuff. It's like weirdly too black, but like the tusks look really nice. Yeah. So what I want to say is about some of the volume interpretation. Okay, you've got this strong highlight here, right? Like on the stomach, right? Right here. Just like when we talked about with the metallics on the goblin earlier, right? We need to be consistent with the highlight placement. So like, this one's more on the front left of his stomach, but like the highlight on his shoulder is like way at the top. Then he has another highlight right here. And then this highlight's like on the back of his arm. And these highlights are on the top of his head. And these are on like the front right of his muzzle, I guess. What you would say, right? And then these are like, this is like on the right, and this is on the right. So, and then this is like down and to the left. Okay. Just now, yeah, I guess. So like everything is just kind of like, there's like no real consideration for like the placement of the highlights. They're kind of, you need to think about highlights as like they are reflections of the light. Okay. So you need to think about their placement quite a bit. You can also like wet the surface and check with a light source that you want to be the light source to see where the highlights would go. But need to make some adjustments. Damn it, I painted it. I did the thing. All right. So we need to adjust some of the lights in order to get them in position with each other so they're more consistent, right? So instead of like down here on the lower part of the chest, I like the one on the stomach. So like instead of right here, maybe the light would be higher up on the chest here, right? If the one's on the snout, it should probably be like here. This one would be like there, right? He would have some kind of here, right? And then like on these the neck folds, right? They would be like more frontal, okay? The thing with highlights is you always want to push them towards the viewer, okay? They always go halfway in between the light source and the viewer's perspective, right? I've shown this with the different camera angles and the placements of light before, but just here, I'm just going to mark where I think they should be roughly. Okay, so here, on these folds, they're going to be all over the place because they're folds. Here, this arm's not bad. It's probably more like here, right? This one's here. Okay, he probably wouldn't get much of any on his arm. If he did, it would be like a tiny bit right here. He would have some on his hand, right? On his leg would be pretty close to where you have it. On his knee, there probably wouldn't be any here at all. This would not be there. Okay, so just look at the like perspective and see and try and like picture where those highlights would be. The one on the stomach is also a little much, so you can always come back with the red and sort of tone it down to blend it in a little bit more, right? You come back with the red to unify it back with the color of the skin, okay? So try and be consistent, because right now the ones on the tusks are quite consistent with the stomach, right? It's like the highlight goes like that. So just think about the highlight placement a little bit more, right? Next. Last one, Scott. Man, I am trying to do a blue light from below and models left and regular light from above to the right. These minis are fun to learn on because they have no expectations and blah, blah. Any help is appreciated. So blue light from below. Okay, so you mean top left. Regular light from the top left. Blue light from the bottom right. I think is what he meant to say. Yeah, I think it's going all right. You can see a little bit of the shadows and stuff. If you're going for like a bluish light, like it's a cartoon, right? So like, don't be afraid to like actually use like a blue light, right? Like, right? It's a comic book, right? Like, just go for it. Right? It's blue. Anything that's white is gonna like reflect pure the color of the light. So, blah blah blah. You know. The skin is probably going to reflect pretty dang close. His teeth are definitely reflect. Right, so just like play with the color, you know? Don't be afraid to like really push in some of these tones. What are you scared of? If it's the bottom right, the reflection on the gun or the bazooka is going to be lower, right? Bam, 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 bam. Right? Just like put it in. Just punch it in, dude. Don't be scared. And then when you get to the like more black parts, that color is going to reduce, so you end up with something more like this, right? Okay. Give the beans. Don't be scared. Now, for the other side, right, if we're going to go for this like yellow whitish light, right? Okay, well, we want some of that light coming across the top here, right? Make sure you get some of that reflection across the gun so you can see it, right? Like hit it on his hair. This is pretty good, but you can push the light more, be a bit more dramatic with it, you know? Maybe like put a little light there. Okay. Here the light's coming in across the skull. All right. Follow the shape of his chest. Probably need some on his hand. Right, just don't be a wuss. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. Oh, we're done. This is the last one, Ethan. I'm finishing up this little effect on this one, but trying to show like yeah, just we'll see some cojones, you know? Like if you're gonna go for an effect, go for the effect. Right? Like which one's more dramatic? Oh crap. Hold on. How do I import a image? Add. Insert a photo. This one. Right? Which one works better? Okay, so yeah, like if you're gonna go for an effect, like really push the effect. Okay, if it's like you're going for an effect, you're making it the like you're trying to be dramatic, right? You like to be dramatic, you have to push. Like the reason film noir is so dramatic is the extreme contrast of light and dark, right? Well, kind of doing the same effect here, but with like this kind of neon light thing, right? So like, yeah, just go for it, right? And it's a comic book, and it's a cartoony comic book, so that gives you even more opportunity to like really push the effect, right? Yeah, I think that kind of gets my point across, anyways. Okay. All right, guys. Schwank. Hello. Thanks for hanging out. I'm gonna stop the recording now. See you, YouTube.